So let's maybe a brief introduction. Captain Wayne Myers, I've known you for years, had an opportunity to do discovery flight days and to talk to our instructors. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Captain Myers.
Oh, well, my name is Wayne Myers. First of all, thank you for having me this afternoon. I'm the base chief pilot for JetBlue Airways in Fort Lauderdale. Just a little bit about my background, I guess we can say. I started here in Miami. I started as went to George T. Baker Aviation in Miami. Started out as a A&P school. I did my airframe first in high school, and then I completed the program 1 year after high school, got my power plant license. So I started pretty young. I started at 14. I was actually too young to get my airframe license by the time I completed the program. But once I turned 18, I was able to get my A&P license. Excellent. So at that point, we decided to pretty much, I liked working on airplanes. I liked being around airplanes, but I decided I wanted to go fly. So at that point, I went to Miami Dade and I figured out how to take courses, and I went to the closest flight school, which happened to be Opelika, where Wayne is, and I got my private license, and then I was trying to decide if there was something I wanted to pursue more, or if I wanted to go back to maintenance, and I got my private, and I started working on airplanes in Opelika, and I decided I wanted to become a commercial pilot. So I'll try to keep it as short as possible, but I ran into another guy who was also trying to become a commercial pilot, and he was at Miami Dade, and he basically gave me a blueprint to follow. He said, "Hey Wayne, this is what I did to help you get your certificates and your college degree at the same time." So I was able to do that, transfer my credits from Miami Dade over to Embry Riddle, and basically got my 4-year degree in basically about 2.5 years. Great. So I got my college degree, and I started continue working on my ratings, and after that I got my ratings. I worked for 135, built my experience, and got my opportunity to go to the regionals. I was at the regional airlines for about 3 years, and then I got an opportunity to work for a company called Miami Air down here in Miami, flying 737s all over the world. I did that for a little more than 3 years, and then after that, I got my opportunity at JetBlue Airways, where I've been here coming up on 11 years.
There's a lot to unpack there. Wow, that's a career in like 2 minutes. A lot to unpack there. Well, first of all, for everyone that's joining us, the format here is a little interesting because this is what's called a Zoom webinar. So we can take questions and answers and through the chat and all that here. And also for those of you watching us on Facebook Live, I always like to know where our viewers are. Let me know if you're sitting here in South Florida or in Kansas or in Dubai or Lima, wherever you might be. Let us know. We kind of get some interesting ones. And that helps us kind of direct, I think, our questions and answers as well, if we know where you're coming from. Now, Captain Wayne, you spoke to our flight instructors about a year ago, and as you go through your background here, there's so many overlapping areas there, right? First of all, starting as a mechanic is, I think, a great proven route for a lot of people. Our director of maintenance, who runs this beautiful hangar, George T. Baker graduate as well.
Oh, wow.
Pilot, yep, absolutely. George T. Baker is this wonderful high school and college actually now program right across the street from Miami International Airport, and they have well, what's it called, like a dual enrollment kind of thing, right? Where you're taking high school classes and maintenance classes simultaneously. So there's 18-year-old kids graduating out of there with airframe or power plant tickets. I think it's incredibly impressive. And so you were there at a very young age, it sounds like.
Yeah, I was. It was lucky. I actually wanted to get into the program from 9th grade, and they didn't allow 9th graders to get in because you had to, at the time, you had to take the TAPE test, and the TAPE test was like general English, basic math skills, things of that nature, and they wanted to make sure that you scored well on that in 9th grade before you actually went into the program in 10th grade. So that kind of held me back a little bit, but it was fun. It was fun. You spend half the day at your local high school, and you spend the other half of the day at the A&P school, and it was fun to work on sheet metal, and and plane airplanes and work on airplanes while everybody else was still sitting in class, studying history and stuff. I was actually doing something that was practical and in an industry that I enjoy and like to being involved in.
Now, I did not go to George C. Baker, but I've had the opportunity to visit many times. I think it's a magical place. Like you think about like the wood shop class that high schools used to have. A lot of them don't have them anymore. But this place, like half the place is like a hangar. There's Cessnas in the back, and there's a 727, I think, back there.
It might be a seven. That was a 707.
It was
It was a seven. It was a 707 back in the day. I don't know if they have a 727 now.
I don't know.
Actually have an MD-80 now. That's what it is. They have an American. They have an MD-80.
Yeah.
A super I believe it is.
Of a giant crane lifting it across 36th Street.
Lejeune, yeah.
Across Lejeune and placing it down. It's amazing because those airplanes get taken apart and put back together every single year. And now for our younger listeners that are chiming in, and we've got a great audience today because everyone wants to know about JetBlue and you as a chief and all the advice I'm sure you have to give. But this is a bit of advice we can give right now to any of our young listeners that are still high school age, is that there are a lot of programs like this around the country. I've been finding out. I heard about one in Illinois that's a high school on the field, and students fly as an elective, which is very rare. And Embry Riddle, speaking of your alma mater, Embry Riddle has a program called the Gates program, I believe. And it's basically a high school curriculum that they're giving for free to high schools. And here in South Florida, in Broward County alone, I want to say there's 6. Shout out to Gustavo Junco, who's kind of the coordinator for that. And we had 22 students from the Embry Riddle High School program come about a month ago and do discovery flights, right? And it's not, you're not going to graduate that program with an AMP license, but a lot of those students are graduating with the new drone UAS 107 certificates, which is a foot in the door. It's an interesting way to kind of get to know a little bit more about aviation and about Embry Riddle, of course. But that's a wonderful foundation. So you were young, you knew what you liked, and you just wanted to be around airplanes. You kind of wanted to get in there, right?
I always because I speak to a lot of students a lot of the times, and I always say, just get involved. That's the most important thing. Even if you're 13 or 14 years old and you really have an interest in airplanes, go out to the airport, ask mom and dad to take you out to the airport, take you out to flight schools, take you out to Wayman, let you get your foot in the door. That those opportunities go unrecognized, and that exposure you may have at 13 or 14 might affect your whole career for the rest of your life.
That's true. I can't tell you how many captains, air traffic controllers, operators I've spoken with that pumped gas when they were kids, washed airplanes, and work 10 hours, get maybe 30 minutes of flying in there. And it's a great way to go about it. Just kind of, like you said, putting yourself in the position where luck can happen, right? Like luck, I've heard so many times that luck is not that lucky. You put yourself into these positions where something will happen, right? So if you hang out at the airport all the time, eventually someone's going to ask you if you want to go fly. So,
and of course, preparation. Prepare for opportunities. You never know when opportunity is going to come knocking on your door. And I'm a big example of this of opportunities. Just being around, being in the right place, being ambitious about what you like to do. People recognize that. People do recognize you being ambitious and you being around, and it does help. Absolutely.
Just being there and ready to say yes. When that opportunity strikes, being ready, being prepared, going and asking yes. And as you went through your quick list there of how you got to where you are, you've done a great job of putting yourself out there, right? So Miami Dade College, which is your first alma mater, our long-term partner now, I think more than 8 years, we've been Miami Dade College's flight training partner, graduated hundreds of their students, is really interesting because I find these collegiate programs throughout the country. Not everyone's an Embry Riddle, not everyone's the University of North Dakota, right? Miami Dade College's program goes back to the 60s, and I constantly find pilots and professionals that, I graduated from Miami Dade College in 80, 90, whatever it was that they did. But these programs exist in Bowling Green, Ohio. They're in little towns throughout the place where they're not a big part of the school. You know, it's not as big as the business school or the football team or anything like that. But you know, they're consistent, and that's a great way for those students that are looking for guidance and funding to get there, right? Because there's a lot of scholarships if you're in the collegiate world, right?
Yep.
Here we are scratching it out for AVGAS, and there's some scholarships that go unclaimed, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of scholarships that go unclaimed, and most of the time the ones that go unclaimed is just because people haven't applied. And I think that's the saddest part of it. You know, it's one thing if they go unclaimed because people publish scholarships and no one knows about it. A lot of people know about it and they just don't get around to applying, or they forget about the deadline. And then there's scholarships that a lot of companies put out that go unclaimed, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And
unfortunate.
Yeah, and I know that actually you're quite involved with some organizations that put scholarships out there. And JetBlue, I think, recently got behind the Latino Pilots Association as well, I think, for a scholarship.
Yes. We have a branch of JetBlue called the JetBlue Foundation, and what they do is they actually donate money to associations like the Latin Pilots Association or OBAP, the Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals, and they do that to develop programs to help young individuals who are interested in aviation and help them to reach their goals in their careers.
Absolutely, it's and those organizations are wonderful, right? Not just because they do scholarships, but the networking that goes on in there, the support. I've seen study buddies come out of there. And I think you're more involved with OBAP, is that right? Because that's how you came to how we originally met.
Yes, I'm a member of OBAP. I've been involved for a little while now, and it's pretty much it's like this. If you're interested in aviation, you're interested in becoming a pilot. You want to be around as many pilots as possible.
Sure.
You want to be, if you're interested in becoming an aviation mechanic, you want to be around as many aviation mechanics as possible, and tap into all the expertise and information that these individuals have, because there's so many people with valuable information and experience that are there to guide you and could help you for free. They're just offering. There's a lot of individuals like myself that are offering their time and efforts to give back. And if this is what you want to do, this is something that you should pursue further.
You make a good point there. Now, I forget who said it, but look at the five best friends around you, and you are an average of your five nearest friends, I think. If you surround yourself with pilots, very likely you're a pilot, right?
Yeah, exactly.
If that's who you're talking to and talking shop and seeing every day, that makes sense. And that's, I think, something that I don't quite use that wording, but I do tell a lot to students early on, right? In every group of students that starts with us, there will be your very dedicated, passionate, high performers that are in the library studying every day. And they're the people that would rather be out at the beach, right? And they show up for a flight every now and then. But who do you hang out with? If you're at the beach, you might have fun right now, but you're not going to do too well in the program. If you're hanging out with the student leaders that are in the library studying all the time, you're going to excel. You're going to get there. You're going to get there quickly.
Yep. I highly suggest that. And, just being in an environment, you might be working on your instrument and talk to somebody who just finished their instrument and they're working on a commercial. Just because they're one step ahead of you, they can give you, some shortcuts they might have learned, or some tips they might have learned that help you get further through your training faster, so you don't have the hiccups that they might have had.
Absolutely. And your peers, the people that your study buddies, the people you kind of start hashing it out with and doing that navigation flights, these are people that you might know the rest of your life. We're an international school, so we get people from all over the world. And it's the funniest thing to see photos of like a Russian guy visiting their friend in Indonesia because they had a layover, and like there's that picture out at the barn. It's kind of fun to see those worldwide relationships happen. And it's true, you never know who's sitting next to you. The person that is studying with you could be a pilot at the company you want to fly for down the road. Could even be the chief, could be that hiring officer, right? Walk into
you agree, you never know. My flight instructor, I helped him get the job at JetBlue, and I'm his boss. So you never know how things play out. I was flying when I was flying at Miami Air. I was flying on the 737, and I landed in Europe, and we're at the hotel, and I ran into a guy that I went to college with that was flying for another airline that just happened to be in Europe.
Great.
Um, Once you get this point in the game when you're flying commercially, you'll be surprised how small the world really is.
Oh yeah, I always say it's the biggest industry and the smallest community. You see the same people all over the place on layovers, at conferences, and things like that. But you're absolutely right. The network is so important. It's an important industry to not burn bridges either, right?
Yes,
That
yes,
gets around really quick,
definitely.
especially with a mandatory records request. like
Mhm.
like uh, your your history definitely is a big part of how you get there. But you mentioned Miami Air, and I like that you went through Miami Air because it's not a traditional route. A lot of people don't consider these smaller carriers. They've got their eyes set on regionals and then American or Delta or whatever it might be. But especially in this last year, it's those smaller operators, the cargo companies that have been going really strong. Tell us about your Miami Air experience. How'd you get there?
Well, I have to say that I really enjoy flying for Miami Air for a few reasons. One, of course, flying international. I went a lot of places in the world that I probably never would have been otherwise, like Guam and Hong Kong and Kyrgyzstan and Saudi Arabia and a lot of places that I probably never would have went. But it was very good experience.
Sure.
When you get flying in other countries and realize how easy we have it in the United States, where you're in radar contact all the time and you're talking to air traffic controllers all the time and things of that nature. A lot of the other countries don't have those abilities to offer those things.
Yeah.
So I had the opportunity to fly in a lot of other countries that didn't have as much, and because of it, it made me a better pilot. So when I did apply for a company like JetBlue Airways and went to training wasn't nowhere near what I experienced at Miami Air, because the training at Miami Air was so strenuous, because it was important because of all the places you were flying around the world, and safety was obviously paramount.
Yeah, I heard they were really tough over there. Now, for those of you that don't know, Miami Air is a small carrier. I think they had 5, 6, 737s. That they got
I
to.
believe at the time I was there, they had 6 737-800s
Nice.
and 2 400s. And the 2 400s were configured for mostly sports teams, baseball teams, the Miami Heat, and they had executive seating.
Exactly. So large charter and special missions, cargo, military transport. I think also they
Yeah, we did military transport. We did spring breakers. Sometimes we did fly college students down to like the Caribbean or down to Florida for spring break.
Wow.
We did a lot of different flying. There was a lot of different flying. I remember flying into Romania one afternoon, and we got into Romania, and there was a bunch of Coast Guard guys that were there. They're getting ready to go over to the Middle East. They just happened to be there for a few days, and we got to talk to them and hear their experiences of flying, different approaches in the Middle East and in Asia and stuff of that nature.
That's true. The U.S. has an extremely advanced aviation infrastructure. We kind of fly inside of a safety blanket almost, right? You've got ATC looking at for you and all these kind of things, and you don't have to go very far. You just come down into Central America, South America, and that safety blanket it's not there, right?
Well, just the Bahamas. You go to the Bahamas. I mean, Nassau has radar, and Freeport has radar. But you go out to any of the outer islands,
Sure.
It's not radar. You're out there by yourself, listening on the frequency. Make sure if there's any other traffic around, and make sure you're keeping a safe distance as far as also visually.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah, it's just right here in the Bahamas. And so it's a good variety of experience because especially I'd say in the last 5, 6 years, the pilot shortage and and people are flowing into regionals and airlines, including our own partners. They were flowing in so quickly that they never really, well, I can't say they never put in their dues because they did, right? Many of them were flight instructors. They put in their time for like 1,000, 2,000 hours, and they got up to the 1,500 that they needed. But it was a pretty quick flow. Now, in the last year, I think those of you that joined the aviation industry are seeing how cyclical it really is. All right, it goes up and down. And in your career,
which is a good thing, because, you know, if you're starting in your career now, you get to see how fickle sometimes the aviation field can be. And it's better to see that earlier in your career than later in your career, you know, because there's a lot of people that are in airlines right now that are grateful for their job.
absolutely.
I mean, grateful for their job, and with the pandemic, you know, it was tough times. You know, it's tough times.
It has.
So
And now in your career, though, I imagine you've been through a few of these turns. I mean, there was a 2008 downturn here. There was 9/11, of course, I think, which is the nearest thing, because 9/11, we shut down. The flight school has been around 34 years. We shut down 100% for at least 6 months, right? Airline wise, I don't think it was as long, but nothing like this last
well,
year.
it depends on what sector. You have to also keep that in mind, because you know, the majors are still flying after September 11th, but a lot of 135 operators were hurting. A lot of 121 supplemental were hurting because they didn't develop an infrastructure for going in and out of the country after September 11th. It was all changing literally day by day.
It was.
You know. And so where the majors might have kept flying, with other vicinities or every parts of aviation was very affected. Part 91, fractionals, 135s, other aspects were affected considerably by September 11th.
Now, I'm sorry, I'm getting some news that we're having to do with our Facebook feed, but I think we're live on Facebook. So if you guys are watching us on Facebook, please confirm. I want to say it is flowing through there. But so the cyclical phase of it is, let's see, well, that was about an 8-year gap. And here we had about a 10-year gap. So it was about a decade-wide thing, right? And those that came before us, of course, that's deregulation, Pan Am, and then Eastern, and all these guys. So I mean, it's part of the industry, right? It's as natural. We expand to it, kind of. Our pilot egos kind of get popped, and we realize, right?
Yeah, it's a sensitive industry. I mean, and you know, it just takes fuel going up to above $100 a barrel, and you know, and it eats into a lot of the profits of the airline. So it's a tough industry. It's a great industry, but it's a tough one.
Yeah, and I think this year, and JetBlue has handled it much better, I think, than most. There was flight reductions all around, but I'm being told that domestically, I think travel's back to about 70% inside the U.S. Would you say you're seeing about that?
Yeah, I would say that our domestic demand has improved since the beginning of the pandemic. I think our international travel is being pretty much held back because of the restriction to take a COVID test prior to coming back into the United States. But hopefully, you know, things are optimistic right now. Hopefully we'll see things change shortly. And hopefully we can see things start returning to pre-pandemic numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, the domestic stuff, and I'm seeing this around the world too. I was talking to some Brazilian friends. Tomorrow we have a Brazilian seminar, actually. And they were telling me that domestically, you know, flights are back up. They're, you know, not where we were a year ago, but they're back up. It's those international flights, right? It's the lack of embassies, it's the restrictions, the COVID testing. But as the world kind of gets into this and vaccines become more and more prevalent, you know, in the US, I believe we're up to over 30% adults have been vaccinated already. So it's kind of this return to normal. We're even thinking about having back in-person classes as soon as May or June of this year. Yeah, we've been entirely on Zoom. We've all gotten really good at Zoom, right?
Got a lot of practice, right?
Yeah.
As soon as we get good at it, and it's going away.
I know.
Hopefully.
But it's interesting because I think we'll keep doing Zoom to some extent. I mean, there's nothing quite like, you know, having a class with like, you know, 10, 12 students, and, you know, everyone's working on the paper charts together and things like that. But there's certainly a lot of things that I think will continue on Zoom. You know, for example, I used to go off and do seminars, and you know, I would be in Bogota or Lima or Delhi and do a seminar. But now, you know, people from the comfort of their home can kind of get this kind of information.
Right.
Although I still do look forward to getting back to that travel.
Yeah, I think you're right. There'll be some extent where we will probably do a lot more Zoom meetings, but at the same token, it won't exclude actually in-person meetings, because there's a lot of brainstorming that can happen in person that can't happen over a video call, you know?
And, coming back to the networking and developing your career side of it, okay, a Zoom meeting is interesting, you get stuff done, but, when an organization like OBAP has their conference, like a lot of getting to know and networking happens, at the hotel bar after the conference is over, or like, having lunch. That's really where you get to know other people and those opportunities, putting yourself in that place for opportunity. And it's just not.
Yeah, I mean, I meet interesting people all the time. I mean, I met some great guys from United just waiting for an Uber. You know, you never know. You never know who you meet being involved in these things. I went to a Latin Pilot Association, one of the conferences, and well, not a conference sponsored by them, but one of the conferences they joined, and just to meet the individuals there and to hear every pilot's journey to become a commercial pilot. It never gets boring. It's like flying an airplane. You never see the same cloud over and over again. And you always see something different. It's great to meet other pilots and hear their stories and their experiences to get to where they got. Hear guys talk that fly the 777 now, and they used to fly tail draggers in Miami, and fly over the beach. It's great to hear those stories and hear people's stories and their experiences. And, some guys, I've talked to the guys that flew charters to the Bahamas, and they say, oh, I love that job. If I can make the money I'm making right now flying commercially doing that, I would do it, So that's the other thing, that's the camaraderie and hearing the other aviators' stories and journeys. That's great.
Absolutely. Somebody once told me, when you ask the pilot how they got into aviation, you get ready to hear a love story. Like there's always someone that took them to the airport, or they live near the airport, or that first discovery flight. Yeah, it's a very impactful moment. So I'm getting some chatter here on the chat that just 30 minutes ago, JetBlue announced it's continuing hiring. Right. So I mean, you've been with me for the last 10 minutes, so I'm sure you don't know too many details about that. I know that one of the things that we talked about before is that you sit in on a lot of hiring, a lot of interviews, and things like that. I imagine it's been quiet for the last year. Sorry.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's been quiet. I've done interviews for 8 out of the 11 years I've been at JetBlue,
Wow.
And from being involved in recruiting for so long and consistently hiring since I've done interviews to now, where things have been completely quiet, it's kind of eerie. But it's kind of like the calm before the storm. I honestly think that this is actually going to make the pilot shortage worse, and it's yet to be seen. But that's my personal opinion. I think that when things do come back, I mean, there's going to be a lot of people trying to fly, and I hope that we have the pilots to facilitate.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's two fronts on that. So I mean, I think the first wave of travel is probably going to be the grandparents that haven't seen their grandkids in a year, families that are spread apart getting together for Easter, birthdays, or summer, things like that. But the other side is, you're absolutely right. The pilot shortage, and I hear this over and over again from everybody I talk to, the pilot shortage didn't go away. It's just hiding, right?
Yeah.
When this happened, and early retirement was extended to a lot of pilots. I think 700 pilots at American took it, and similarly at United and others. And so it's actually accelerated the pilot shortage, just on hold right now.
Yeah, and it's going to be like you just said. It's a lot of family and friends and relatives, and they're going to be traveling when things finally open up and return. And I think the demand is going to be overwhelming. Right now it's coming back, and travel's creeping back, and when it finally does, it's going to be like gangbusters, and we'll be back, and all the airlines will be back to hiring again.
Yeah,
guarantee it.
Not to mention the cargo side of things. Now the whole world, I mean, before Amazon and mail to your to delivery to your door was growing and growing, but that's accelerated dramatically in the last year. And so that side of aviation not only stayed strong, but it's grown dramatically.
Yes.
Atlas Air and everyone that operates Amazon Air, uh, that side of the industry, along with executive aviation, also has continued to be really kind of like the bright point in aviation for last year.
Yeah, and I think we'll see executive aviation grow as well, because we'll see that come back before business travelers will probably start flying on airlines again, because companies can't take the risk of you flying to Kansas City for a business meeting and possibly being exposed to COVID if you haven't had your shot. So I expect the private and executive flying to probably possibly come primarily before they start going back to the airlines.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so for everyone that's been kind of in a holding pattern, let's say you are that flight instructor at 1,500 hours and you've been on hold. Maybe now you're pushing 2,000 hours if you kept your job. I know there were some people that got hired to regionals, and then their training or their IOE was put on hold. A lot of those are calling back right now. So, what do you recommend to that pilot who's got their hours, they're ready to go, they're waiting for the application windows to open? What should somebody like that be doing right now?
Well, what I recommend is first, do not lose your ambition. A lot of people they look at it negatively because they're like, well, I've worked so hard, I've spent so much money just to get here, and now look what's going on. Don't lose your ambition. Stick with it. We all, and ask any pilot that's been in commercial aviation, everyone will tell you they've been in some type of downturn. So stay ambitious. Secondly, if you're flying, if you're a flight instructor and you have 1,500 hours and you're just waiting for your opportunity to possibly go to regionals, don't don't give up on what you're doing. Keep up your craft, hone in on your craft. If you're an instructor, you've been instructing for a year and a half now or 2 years, how can you be a better instructor? Push yourself to being a better instructor. There's always something that you didn't know. It's always something that you can learn. And push yourself to the limits to learn more. Take advantage of this time, because if you need to brush up on your instrument skills, this is the perfect time to do it. Because if you go to the regionals, they don't have time to teach you your instrument skills. They trying to teach you how to fly the regional jet and their procedures specifically for that airline. So hone in on your instrument skills, hone in on you being an instructor. Read up on jet transition courses. I mean, there's plenty of them online. Look at YouTube videos, and you might learn a new technique on holding or a new technique on how to take a clearance down. You guys have so many more resources that I didn't have when I was in training. So take advantage of this time. This is my words of wisdom from Wayne. Hone in on your craft. Take advantage of the time, because when things do open up for the regionals, and say you wanted to go to a regional airline and you're just waiting for that opportunity, you'll be ready.
Absolutely. And you said something earlier that I think is really important for anybody that right now that's kind of on hold, so to say, right, is to get involved, right? Get involved with organizations like OBAV, LPA, the 99s, Women in Aviation is a great organization. Get out there, volunteer. Young Eagles, if you have a local flight school, just go down, knock on the door, volunteer, offer to do Young Eagles flights, right? I think that is something that, because it's one-to-one, I think it's actually been pretty successful in this last year. We've been able to get some kids, out of their living rooms, away from the screens, over to the airport to do something fun. And in the end, it's donating time, a little bit of fuel to go out and fly, but you stay current. You stay current, you're sharing your passion for aviation, and kid has a great memory. And on your resume, you get one more line in there. You're an active Young Eagles pilot. When I look at resumes, I love seeing things like that, because when I see an active EAA member or an OBAP, secretary or vice chairperson or something like that, it tells me that they're not just clocking out and going home, right? They're living it. They're in that pilot lifestyle, and they're reaching out and making contacts. And like you said, you never know who you're going to meet at doing one of these things.
Yeah. And to basically circle back and tag on to what you were saying, also, my father used to always say, help starts at home. Contribute in your own flight school. Go sit down and watch the dispatchers and see what they do. Go sit down in one of the instrument classes that one of your colleagues might be teaching. Help out around your flight school. You're going to always learn something. Those principles and things that you might learn at that level will take you a long way in your career. You don't see it later. I mean, you don't see it right immediately, but later in your career, you'll see it, and you have a broader sense than, hey, I fly the airplane from point A to point B.
That's true. That's very true. Yeah, it's an interesting time because anything you can do to not be away from, keep yourself current, to take out the cousin, the friend's niece for a flight, that 1 hour to flight. I just feel it's the hand flying skills. What I find is when people stay away, if you put all this effort to get your licenses, wherever you might be right now, private, commercial, CFI, you put all this time and effort, investment into getting there, but to let those licenses just sit on the shelf while you wait for a hiring window to open is kind of a recipe for disaster, right? Because then you get into the sim and you're behind the plane and all that stuff. So you got to stay on top of it, keep yourself current. The instrument side of things is very important, right? Because even as an instructor, how often do you shoot approaches yourself? You might be teaching them, right?
Right.
But you gotta hop in the simulator or whatever it might be to do it yourself.
Yep. Yeah.
How do you think hiring will change? Right now, in the last 5 years, there was a pilot shortage, and we know that prior to that, it was almost they were trying to keep people out of the airlines, right? Like you had to reach this high level to kind of be brought in. And then as the pilot shortage came, I know that the airlines, especially someone like SkyWest, was very proactive about coaching new pilots through INDOC and kind of getting them into the airplane. Now, at the JetBlue level, you're hiring typically somebody that's more experienced, probably 3,000 plus hours. But do you think it's going to be a higher bar? Is it going to be more strict on hiring?
It's kind of hard to say right now. I mean, obviously there's a bunch of pilots right now that have tons of experience. There's still guys at regional airlines with 6,000 or 7,000 hours that would like to come to JetBlue. I can't say how long that will last. If throughout the whole industry, not just JetBlue or Spirit or American or United or anywhere else, the demand for flying is not going to be enough pilots. So, what's competitive now in 6 months may not be competitive, and we see it all the time. When I got hired, what was competitive was somewhere around 6,000 to 7,000 hours to get hired at JetBlue. And I've seen it go down to around 4,000 to 3,500 once it becomes competitive. So it varies and according to supply and demand, obviously, but just you have to be prepared for success. Say, hey, look, if it does come down to 3,500 hours, that's what's competitive, or 4,000 hours, I want to be ready. If I'm considered for this job, I want to be ready. If it goes up to 6,000 or 7,000 hours, that's fine as well. Either way, I want to be ready. I want to be ready and marked and ready for my opportunity.
Yeah. That's what it takes, right? Ready for your opportunities. I like that. Let's take to a few answers. We're actually, oh my gosh, we're getting to the end of our hour, but there are a few questions here in the pool. Preston would like to know your views on the restricted ATP in the airline industry. That's being able to get your ATP at 1,200 hours or 1,000 hours if you have a bachelor's, down to 700, I think, if you're a military pilot, right?
Right.
What do you think of that?
My view is I don't think it's of any concern. I mean, you got to understand, prior to the Kogan crash, there were guys flying commercially with less time than that. I think the ATP restriction was put in just to give a little more buffer for safety, and I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing because if you're transitioning from a prop airplane to a jet airplane, they don't. Going over your scan in a jet airplane is not the best thing to do. You should have your scan down before you get into a jet airplane. So, the fact of having ATP at a certain amount of time, or restricted ATPs, just added buffer of safety. I think it's a good thing. It's good because, even the pilots that are coming in as first officers, you're not going to be first officers forever. You're going to be captains. When a company hires you, they're hiring you to be a captain one day, and you're going to have to fly with the FO that has less time and less experience, and you're going to teach them as well. So the ATP program, I think it wasn't received well at first, but I think it's a good thing, and hopefully, I think the intent was to cut down on possibility of more accidents, and I think that's shown over the last few years.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. And the accidents that have happened, even these 737 MAX ones, there were some system things, but it was a combination of that with inexperienced pilots that I think ultimately led to what happened there. We have a question here from an attendee. How many hours do you work as a pilot? Kind of straightforward.
So when you become a commercial pilot and you land at one of the 121 carriers, you have a lot of flexibility on your schedule, and everything's done by seniority based. But you can determine if you want to work as little as 15 days in a month, or you want to work as many as 20 or 22 days a month. You have a lot of flexibility in these airlines right now on how much you want to work or how little you want to work.
Yeah. That's the bidding process. You bid on how many flights or what lines you work.
Yeah, you bid according to seniority, and they basically, your bid is depending on how much flight hours the company has for that month, and you would bid around a certain amount of hours, and you can sometimes you can bid for like what they call a flight line for 75 hours, and then you can probably drop below that, or you can fly above that depending on what your wants and needs are.
And the quirky thing about this question about how many hours a pilot work is that you almost have to think about being a pilot less as like a 9 to 5 and more of a lifestyle, right? Like you're flying X amount of hours, right? But some of you are commuting to get there, right? There's training time, there's currencies, there's reserve time. So there's a kind of pretty dramatic.
Yeah, there's a lot, right? So like if you fly a 4-day and you fly 25 hours in a 4-day, you're basically 12 days in a month, you're done for the month.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So
you have 18 days off for that month. So it just kind of depends on,
And that's why so many captains I know have that sideline. It feels like every captain has like a little side business, like property rentals, or they got something on the side.
Yeah, well, you have to. If you get 18 days off, what some guys do, they might even pick up another trip, and you make 20 to 25% more than what you would have if you didn't fly. So it's a lot of flexibility on what you like and what's in favor for you. Some people like to take that time off and travel. Some people like to spend that time with their family. Some people like to start their own businesses. The good thing about this job, it gives you a lot of flexibility and a lot of options.
It does, absolutely does. There's several questions about hiring demand from JetBlue, but I think the news is so breaking that we can't really speak too much about it. Apparently, it's a call for 200 pilots and what they want to hire on. But I think for those of you that are curious specifically about the call that just went out, I think you're better off kind of tuning into Aero News and kind of seeing how that progresses. I don't know if you want to speak to it.
Well, I can say that things are looking optimistic. I can say that things are looking optimistic, and hopefully we will be hiring soon. I can't speak specific or on times, but hopefully we will be hiring soon, and as well as the whole industry. I hope the whole industry starts hiring soon.
Oh yeah, I certainly believe it. And so here's a fun question. Like I said, we're kind of getting to the end of our hour, so maybe we'll finish on this question. Tim Sutton in Missouri says that airlines have cultures. Southwest is known as a fun place. Delta is very professional. How would you describe the culture at JetBlue?
So at JetBlue, we have what we call our values. So we have safety, caring, integrity, passion, and fun. And JetBlue says, hey, look, these are our 5 values, and this is what we take to work every day. Of course, everybody wants to be safe, right? We want to demonstrate caring towards our fellow crew members and our customers. We want to make sure that when we work and we provide our service, we do it with integrity. and fun and passion. You know, we when I go to work, I like to have fun, and I make sure that my team is having fun. We are always cutting jokes and having a good time, and that's the environment that JetBlue provides. And you know, that's what I like about my job. I like going to work every day because I'm happy with the people I work with. I know we're going to get work done, but we're going to enjoy it. And culture is very important. Make sure that whatever airline you decide to go to, or whatever company that you want to go to, that it's something that fits for you as well, because you don't want to be at a company where you're unhappy, because if you're unhappy, your performance is going to show that you're unhappy. So
absolutely. Yeah, and that's something that I would encourage everyone is research the airlines that you're applying for, because they are known for different things, not just routes and aircraft types, but you know, the kind of environment you're going to be going into. JetBlue is one of my favorites. Not only the home base here, Fort Lauderdale, that I always fly out of. My wife has a JetBlue credit card. We fly that much, so really enjoy it.
Thank you for your business.
Well, thank you so much, Wayne, for joining us. And I do actually have a little announcement, something that we're just launching this week. So we've been doing these InSight Aviation interviews where we have captains such as yourself, air traffic controllers, aerospace professionals can come in and interview. We're now going to be taking this series, which has been on YouTube and on Facebook, and we're turning it into a podcast. So I think starting right now, you can go on to Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast, InSight Aviation, and you'll have our first 4 episodes, and I think we've got maybe a dozen in the pipe ready to go. So excited about that.
Awesome, that's great.
This is another product of the pandemic as we started doing these, and I've gotten to really enjoy it. So
that's awesome.
For joining us, any parting words? If somebody wants to reach out to you or to JetBlue in general?
Yeah, I mean, my final words would be, hone in on your craft, stay positive, stay ambitious. Things are going to turn around. They're going to pay off. They're going to pay off. I was right in the middle of September 11th, and where they said that this was going to be a long time for things to turn around. And when they did, you have to, just be ready, and those would be my final words. Just be prepared, be patient, and stay ambitious. And if you guys have any questions for me, get my information from Eddie. He'll plug me in and send me an email or give me a call. We can talk.
Yeah, feel free to reach out to info@wayman.edu, WAYMAN.edu. Happy to answer any questions you might have about flight training, become a professional pilot, or if you want to get in touch with the man right here, Captain Wayne Myers, feel free to do that. All right. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for everyone for tuning in this afternoon. You have a great day.
Thank you for having me. Have a good evening, everybody.
My pleasure. Thanks, everyone.